I would like to, thank you. Do over. I would like to call my first witness to the stand. He participated in football for most of his adult life. He also belonged to a home-based sparring club, that is, if you consider fighting with your older brother as an extracurricular activity. He jumped right into Toastmasters as our current Sergeant-at-Arms, and I'm delighted, as I'm sure you all are, to hear his 4 to 6 minute icebreaker speech titled My First. Tony Valle.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. I consider myself to be a pretty private person, so I have not shared my story with many people. I have heard many of your life experiences through your speeches and understand that everyone has their own stories. I consider being amongst friends to allow me to share a portion of my journey. As a seven-year-old, I grew up in Nicaragua under a communist regime. Life seemed simpler in some ways. We did not have to keep up with the Jones. Everyone in my neighborhood was in a bad situation. We only worried about the simple necessities, which always involved waiting in long lines for limited supplies. Our rations for a family of 4 included a loaf of bread, 2 pieces of government soap, an 1/8 liter of cooking oil, 1 pound of brown sugar, 1 roll of toilet paper, 2 liters of milk, and 1 pound of rice. The rations were due to Nicaragua being at war with the U.S. and the Contras. At least that's what the government would tell us at community gathering. My 12-year-old brother and I were already being recruited to fight up in the hills against the Americans. The Sandinistas would attract children with cartoons, candy, and toys, but underneath the good treatment, the Sandinistas were preparing us to be combat troops. By the age of 8, I knew how to clean and fire an AK-47. I knew to look for cover when planes flew overhead. They teach anti-American propaganda to the minutes of the valley of their lives. My family was always an outspoken critic of the Sandinista government and the situation in the country. By 1989, the Sandinistas would have a routine visit to our home to encourage my father to be silent, which included physical abuse. My parents decided it was time for the family to leave the comfort of a home in Nicaragua. Our destination would offer a new beginning and a hope for better things to come. But nothing happened, and life returned to normal. My father was asked to travel more frequently for his company. Most of his business trips lasted weeks, but one day he did not return. It had been months since his departure, and we would only receive random updates via my mother. The Sandinistas would still continue their visits, even though my father had been gone for months. The usual knock on the door and the ever-present question, "Is your father here?" My mother would be quick to answer that she had not heard from him in months. One day, my mother seemed different. She told my brother and I that we would be going on vacation, and she started selling anything that would provide money to pay for the visa applications. My mother and brother would apply first and were approved. A month later, my visa was denied. My mother cried and said, "Denied? Denied," as in a state of disbelief. It seemed that her dreams and hopes had been pulled from under her feet. After a couple of months, we tried for a Mexican visa, and we would ask in our prayers for God to grant it. The visa was granted, finally. I had never seen my mother so excited for me. The day came for me to travel to Mexico, and my mother gave me a hug, as if she would never see me again. My grandmother and I arrived in Mexico. We met up with some of my father's friends, and everybody commented that my father was a good man, as if I needed to be convinced. Later, I found out that we were going to Rosarito, which is a little closer to the U.S. border. When we landed in Rosarito, we met up with my coyote, which is a slang term for smuggler. We started to drive north, and I received instructions of what to say and how to behave if anyone asked any questions. My response would be the first sentence that I would learn in English. "She is my aunt." The car ride north did not seem very far, and soon we stopped in front of a huge fence, and my grandmother said goodbye to me. I looked up in amazement at the fence, which seemed to touch the sky, but the coyote commented, "Don't worry, we're going underneath it." She pushed the fence and told me to slide under. My heart felt like if it was trying to escape my body. We walked a mile or two, then we reached a house. I was told to wait with a strange lady while they cleared customs. 5 hours later, there was no sign of them. Did they get in trouble? Are they arrested? When my grandmother came back, I had never been so happy to see her. After our brief reunion, everybody jumped in the car and continued driving north. Around midnight, I finally admitted that I was hungry. We pulled into a 7-Eleven. I was amazed. We could buy as much as we wanted, and there were no long lines. It was my first time paying without a ration card. It was my first time using a microwave. Scrappiest and sounds, my first taste of my American dream was a half-frozen burrito from 7-Eleven. A couple of weeks later, I was reunited with my father in Florida. It turns out that he had been working 3 jobs and saving for my whole family to come to the U.S. A few weeks after that, my mom and brother joined us in Florida. My intention to share this story with you is not to share my struggle. It's to share the people who provided the foundation of who I am and what I stand for. I'm the outcome of their hard work and sacrifice, but more importantly, I'm part of the American dream. Thank you.